Welcome to Assembly 2020, a special online edition of Somerset House. Somerset House are putting together, or have put together, an annual experimental music series, and this is the 2020 edition. My name is Coby Sey. I'm a musician, amongst other things. Um, yeah, and I've been making music professionally for several years. Although it feels like I've been doing it even longer, since my teens, I guess. And today I'm going to be talking to a really good friend of mine um, named Ben Vince, who is presenting his brand new work in conjunction with Assembly 2020, um, alongside Call and Response, an audio company who specialize, or definitely at least, work within binaural recordings and sound engineering and sound design. Um, Ben Vince has been taking part in this residency provided by Somerset House Studios for 4 months to produce a brand new piece using binaural recording. And the name of the record is called Falling Into Time. I've had a listen to it several times. It's incredible, of course, and it's a continuation, well, in my head at least, it's a continuation of this sort of enveloped inner world, inner workings that Ben Vince has been carefully creating through his tools of choice, through his experiences. So let's get into it, really. Ben, thanks for asking me to have this sort of conversation with you, despite the fact that we're doing this remotely. It's a pleasure, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
yeah, I'm very, very happy you agreed to talk to me about it. And for our viewers, like me and Coby have worked together for quite a while. We know each other's music really well, and we support
Yeah,
each other in that way. So it's really nice to have a friend and a peer to interview me about my work. So yeah,
yeah.
thanks so much, and yeah, it was a lovely introduction as well.
Oh, it's all good. I mean, we've known each other roughly for about 4 years, but it feels even longer. And it occurred to me a few years after we first met that you're familiar with some work that I did before. But we can have, we've talked about that, outside of this conversation. Also, surprisingly as well, is that we've worked a lot, but mostly within the context of performing live. We've done a lot of live shows together for each other's projects, um, and Falling Into Time, as well as one of my forthcoming releases, will mark the first time that we're going to put out something publicly.
Yeah.
You know, as
On record.
on record, yeah,
Mm.
comprising of us two. And for your particular project, it's not just one track, but 2 tracks. But it just seemed to make sense, and it just seemed like something that was based on intuition, which I think is a big part of not only this record, but also um, a lot of the music that I've listened to by you, or featuring you. So basically I wanted to talk about that, as well as talk about um, I couldn't help but think of the words or the names that are used for the songs, as well as the name for the actual piece itself, Falling Into Time. And connecting that also with the names of previous releases. And when I think about those names, I think about um, the idea of change, the idea of concepts to do with circular motion, which I suppose could even be applied with your technique when it comes to performing with your tenor saxophone. Circular breathing and breath control. I think also about um, a combination of submission and letting go, but also um, you know, almost like a leap of faith. I guess like that came into mind when I thought about those words falling into time. And you know, as I get older as well, I think about these things more and more. You know, like not only surrendering and fall into time, but also just, you know, it's a heavy thing to talk about generally, man. You know, just the fact that we are working within time, and you know, with that comes, you know, the idea of, you know, um, just I guess I don't know, maybe mortality or permanence, but
Yeah.
also finding ways to sort of transcend that as well. You know, through
Mm.
our sound and what we put out. You know,
Yeah.
are these things that you think about when you make your music, and to what extent?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Like, I kind of want to like um go back to sort of like something you said right at the start, which is like it's just the feeling that you've been like doing this for a long time, you know, or sort of like that kind of sounded like to me is sort of like, you know, this kind of connection with intuition, creativity, like improvisation is kind of like also like an accumulation of like everything that has like happened before, and a sort of like a in a sort of like a personal experience way, but also like in a historical way. There's sort of like echoes of sort of like past events, like and yeah, the collapsing of the future into the present and the past into the present.
Hmm.
I'm kind of
Sure.
interested, like in that, in with regard to like the title, as it were. Like, although I don't want to, I don't want to explain the work like too much, but like time is very kind of central to my like practice in a very kind of like uh, micro and macro way, and it's based around like it's based off of like playing with other people a lot and sort of like this energy exchange in real time and this kind of like um awareness of the moment. I don't really know, like I can't really articulate it that well always, but like it's sort of like a vibrational awareness.
Mm,
There's also kind of like cultural as
mm,
well as like just purely sonic, and that
100%.
and that comes through with like all of the people I play with, and why I kind of like nowadays just always end up deciding to like use loads of different people for a record or want to collaborate with loads of different people, because I feel like there's more that can be done with a sort of like this kind of like mutual uh, aid, and kind of like in a vibrational sense, and a sort of like uh, a communal kind of like appreciation of time in the sort of like in the small moments and the big moments. It's like time like slows down and speeds up. It doesn't like stay the same. Like
Mm,
and it's probably something people have realized over like this lockdown period as well. Like that
totally.
the time's not linear, and that it kind of moves like within you and without and out of you as well.
Mm. I definitely get that whenever we perform together, and whenever I perform with people that I feel really close affinity with, you know. And I mean, on that note, you know, it's something that I do miss a lot. And lockdown has, in some ways, reminded me of that. Not necessarily because I miss it, but because of what you know, just as what you said about, um, you know, time sort of just shifting and sort of moving into something that's not as linear as we actually kind of, you know, thought of it to be. You know, um, yeah. I mean, also, I don't know. I don't know if this is something that is of resonance, but I do feel a strong sense of meditation with your music, and that also resonates with me too. Just a sort of reflection, and also reflecting what's been absorbed and having that sort of brought out in a way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of my music's like non-lyrical, although it's becoming like I'm increasingly kind of interested in words. But yeah, I think it's sort of like that's a good word to use, like reflective, for sort of like how I kind of like want my music to operate, because it's like sort of like a like a membrane where like you can sort of like become like a vessel for like reflecting yourself and also the outside world as well. And I'm kind of interested in sort of like how one can like work with sound to sort of like bring about a sort of like a vibrational awareness and a heightened consciousness in some regard, whether that's sort of like to do with going into yourself or going into sort of like your sort of like cosmic position, like in the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's hard to say sort of like whether how referential instrumental music can be, but I think about melody a lot. I think about like rhythm and like texture so much, like
likewise,
sort of, like a bed for sort of like bigger things to come through.
Absolutely. I mean, I like, for me, I've I mean, this is not to say mine or anyone else's answer is right or wrong, but for me, I feel that's such an important part of sound and music. Like able to communicate those things where even though like using words and language is as advanced as it can be, I still feel that there's still nuances there that that only sound and music can really sort of bring out within the communications that occur between people, and knowing that and reminding myself of that reminds me of the importance of seeing music more as a as a communicative tool, as well as a reflective tool for oneself, and it's probably why I think about it a lot as well, like because in some ways it's helped me to use words and to communicate, but also find and also of course like enable me to communicate with people, that in that sort of language, in that sort of mode or medium of sound and music. Sure. Speaking of lyrics, how did you and I hope I've got. I mean, it should be correct, but Dali de Saint Paul. How did you two meet up? This is for the viewers out there. Dali de Saint Paul is on the third movement, the third track on "Falling Into Time" by Ben Vincent Coe. Dali provides lyrics and vocals for this particular track.
Yeah, so me and Dali have like played together in her like improvised project called EP64, which is a live project, which is like supposed to be like it's called Ephemeral Project 64, which means there's 64 rituals or happenings of the thing, and I've been involved in a couple of them, completely improvised. And she's a incredible vocalist and performer. It's like a very kind of like a channel for some kind of like intense kind of surreal energy. And I think the lyrics in that song kind of like reflect that kind of improvised approach. It's more sort of like yeah, sort of like embodying a kind of like a feeling, or sort of like what she did was sort of interpret the title of the track, create lyrics, just not many, you know, like just like a few to sort of like get to this sort of like feeling of the track. And then there's like a bit in Italian as well. I don't like understand everything in there, but I think it's like pretty similar to the English. And yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's I was sort of like wanting to create a kind of like a simmering kind of like how to put it, like a sort of like a surreptitious bubbling of something, like that sort of like maybe sort of like without having to go to work and stuff, we've been more like, or some of us not having to go to work, we've been more like attuned to sort of like peripheral kind of like feelings or like moods in a way that kind of take us over. Yeah. I'm not really sure. It's quite like, the lyrics are quite like abstract. They're just very sort of it's sort of like a possession of an energy.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that's what's needed to get either to get a point across, or either to just, you know, take whatever emotion is present within a piece, you know, to take it where it needs to take it to. You know,
yeah,
I mean, through cadence, through, you know,
I mean, I just never really know if I'm finished with anything, really. Yeah. Like when I finish a track, it's kind of like I don't really feel like it's finished. It's just sort of like when I have to stop working on it in a way. And I mean, in my mind, with your music, definitely with my music as well, I feel, you know, it's all it's a continuous thing. Like, this release is part of a larger sort of, you know, world, for want of another word. I don't know, for lack of another way of putting it. You know, like, it's, I don't, you know, I kind of like that. Well, I really like that personally, because I feel that there's more. There's not only that there's more to come, but also there's more to unravel, and there's also room for self-referencing. You know, a lot of my favorite musicians are incredible at doing that. You know, where they manage to sort of build something. You know, like architecture. You know, sonically, and I'm able to sort of navigate that in some way, and there's enough information, but there's also enough for me to just sort of, you know, delve into and be enveloped by, you know, and I don't mean that just in a sort of escapist way, but also in terms of like how, you know, or it helping me to see things in various ways, you know, in ways that I wouldn't have known, but once I know and once I take it in, then it's like, wow, okay, you know, like an epiphany or something. So yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I feel like modern like capitalist society doesn't like afford us kind of this kind of freedom. uh,
Yeah, yeah.
in
It's yeah.
in a general way. Like you have to kind
Mm,
of like seek it out somehow.
mm,
And I feel
yeah.
like this is quite like a big part of my work as well. Whilst I'm sort of like, I feel like, I don't release like overtly provocative or political lyrical music, but like I feel like a lot of it is to do with this sort of like relationship we have to capitalist society and how it, and also
100%.
like social media and things like that. This sort of like atomization of like people, like the kind of like destruction of communities and kind of tribal like
Mm, mm.
um, culture wars that are kind of like stoked by like the media and
But
stuff.
yeah, the so-called powers that be, you know.
And it's just like,
Yeah.
you know, in this society, kind of like freedom means like loneliness
Mm.
in a lot of ways. And I feel
Sol-
like,
Solitude.
yeah,
Yeah.
and 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 this kind of like, yeah, an opportunity to kind of like get out of that is sort
Mm,
of like linked to kind of like intuition and
mm.
uh, a sense of time, a sense of sort of like the wave.
Yeah. Totally.
Was knowing that sort of like things are up and down, like, and sort
100%. Yeah.
of I want to try and kind of like, present sort of like um the like the terrible and beautiful like parts of like existence, because we're not
So
like
important.
shown them, like,
I agree. A lot of how social media is designed, I think, just it just feels this kind of discouragement of that. And even when people post stuff that some people might consider, political or or negative, even though I don't think it's negative, I think it's just it's real. Like it's yeah. I think more than ever it's needed, and I feel a huge sense of I feel it's needed for us to do what we do, and I feel a huge sense of responsibility as well.
yeah,
That's not to say that I, believe, in, trying to, compartmentalize or package what I do for, something or someone, because I feel like there's a responsibility, or, you know, I, but I do think that, that we are, we work and we exist in a landscape where so much stuff is happening around us that we can't not say something. We can't not express, what needs to be expressed through us, as well as to, create what we create.
mm,
What using the word worlds again, so that people can
yeah,
sort of find something that
really like,
that could help, take them to another level. That's both a solitary thing, or refuge from all of these pressures, especially ones to do with capitalism, or including things to do with capitalism. It's and it's something that permeates through my music, and I definitely get that sense with your music, and from the conversations we've had over the years, man.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's good to see a few other names as well, like a few friends of ours on this record too, like Valentina, amazing percussionist, drummer,
mm,
um, Alpha Maid, aka Leisha Thomas, on guitar for the second track, um, and also JB Glazer,
mm,
who I met not too long after meeting you about 4 years ago. Um, I'm interested to know, um, Yeah, I mean, of course, we've worked with Valentina a few times before. We've worked with Alpha Maiden, Don't Give Your Life. Yeah, I mean, were there any sort of? I mean, it's probably such an obvious question, but I mean, what led to, you know, bringing them on to this record, as well?
A lot of serendipity, I
Mm.
guess, but also like long-standing creative connections that I wanted to kind of use the opportunity of Somerset House given me to kind of like, I don't know, sort of like have an occasion to sort of like try and make recorded music together, which is, I guess, kind of similar for Coby and well, yeah, for like, you know, we've known each other for a long time, but we haven't like, you know, we haven't kind of crystallized the connection on a recording, and that's the same with JB Glazer, really.
JB Glazer, yeah.
He's been a sort of like quite a sort of a steady influence on me and my creative work for a long time. You know, he's sort of like it's consistently kind of like releasing his own stuff, like, without much kind of like press recognition or anything like that, but it's just a very kind of consistent like creative thirst. And we work in quite different ways, you know, so you know, we haven't sort of like jammed like me and you have.
So has it been more of a case of like sending things back and forth to each other?
No, not really. I feel like, you know, the way people played on the record was quite similar to your experience, I guess, is sort of like taking that kind of opportunity to sort of like be like, oh, here's a track, like, do you want to just play on this? Like, you know, so sometimes I usually kind of like, I like to make the kind of recording session quite a momentous, like, not you know, not to put like pressure on it, but just sort of like make it relaxed and kind of like, so that we're kind of like ready to kind of communicate on a vibrational level like that. But that's been like, you know, kind of impossible with the coronavirus. So like, it's been a bit like more detached and remote in terms of the process for me. But like, I also, yeah, it's been like really happy with the stuff I have managed to do with other people, and I was just sort of like, I was just going that way, really. Like, I was sort of maybe thinking of trying to do something like more just like solo saxophone, but I think I just have a very like a very tight connection with sort of like how I feel about the sound, and sort of like as representing sort of like how I'm feeling at that point in time, and as a sort of like a message and a part of the story. A lot of initial things that I was thinking I was going to do with it, I didn't end up, or like it just morphed into something else. But I think I mean the opportunity to kind of like be able to use the sort of like spatialized audio in a kind of 3D sense, has sort of like been able to kind of like think about like the physical aspects of sound a little more, and also kind of just have sort of like experiment with sort of like more acute kind of placement of like sonics. And
I mean, I remember reading about it and just thinking, wow, this is fantastic. Just having, being able to have the facilities to put together a recording of songs using, binaural techniques. Like, I have to admit, like, I don't know if I've like consciously listened to a lot of music with that, form, with that technique applied, even though I have an inkling I might have done, but like, have you listened to like a lot of music that's, that applies this sort of that has applied this sort of technique? Why not?
Well, I mean, like, no, like, unless you have like a an opportunity to kind of make that stuff, then like it's more about the space you have to work with, I guess. Like, because like with 2 speakers, you're only going to be able to kind of hear in stereo, but like I guess with the stuff I've been doing with call and response, this sort of like we've been working in like a 27.1 or 2 like studio with like speakers coming up down on like circular chassis in a like like a 3D kind of thing. And then like what we've made is kind of translated into 8 channels for binaural audio, so that sort of like just gives the sense of sort of like 3D depth, which you'll probably be able to hear and feel a bit on the recording. I was sort of like, I guess at the start I was my priority was kind of like the music, so like I spent like a lot of time writing and sort of like making stuff, and then it like when I took it into the studio, it kind of takes on this kind of new architectural life, I guess, which is like, you know, my music's always had like, and live performance have always had quite a lot of movement, like left to right, and this sort of like waves just are kind of going on like that. But this, I guess this was sort of like a good, like an opportunity to do that on record. I've done a spatialised performance before with Lucinda Shua, the cellist.
Yeah, I remember hearing about it. I was unable to attend. I think I might have been on tour or something. But yeah, I heard it was really good.
Yeah, it was an amazing opportunity as well. Like, but it's very different. Like, just doing it all live is like, I'm kind of like, you know, just full kind of intuition and kind of like improvisation. I guess where I feel sort of like more comfortable. I guess sort of making a sort of like a crystallizing of sort of like a piece of work in that way is sort of like something I kind of like, I guess that I took a lot more like consideration and stuff. But yeah, like I hope it kind of feels like there's motion within the
definitely.
sound. Like
definitely. Like I'm really impressed and really like, yeah, I found it to be incredible, this release, you know? And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what other people think, or knowing what other people think of this particular release. You know, like it's amazing. Yeah. On that note, I think that's it from us.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, really appreciate you bringing me on to have this conversation with you.
Yeah.
We'll probably chat some more outside of these settings, either through phone or socially distanced or something. We'll get some cherry bombs again, or some Guinness. I don't know, but
yeah, mate. Yeah. Thanks so much for interviewing me. It's been like a really nice kind of opportunity to kind of talk with like a fellow artist and someone I'm just like really happy to have on the piece as well. Like,
I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
So yeah, it means a lot, and yeah.
Likewise, for sure. Yeah, to everyone viewing this out there online, thank you very much. And yeah, honestly, 7 o'clock, 1900 hours UK time. Make sure you tune in and listen to Ben Vince's new piece, Falling Into Time. It's incredible. Shout out to Somerset House Studios, call and response to help facilitate this. Again, shout out to Ben for making this, along with all the other collaborators too. Yeah, be sure to tune in then. And yeah, the website is assembly2020.co. That's assembly2020.co. Thank you, and yeah, peace.
Bless.